Hi, I'm Dr. Keenan Puritan, and we're on a search for lost episodes from American history. And here we are outside of Harvard University, and some might know that Harvard was America's first college. However, did you know that the college was named for the Reverend John Harvard, or that it was founded to train ministers?
The primary purpose of this place was to train ministers of the gospel to preach the scriptures. Since that time, things have changed dramatically.
The school was founded in 1636, barely 7 years after the Puritans first began to settle here in Massachusetts. The Reverend John Harvard was a young minister who died of tuberculosis soon after he arrived from England. To honor his memory, the General Court of Massachusetts named the school after the Reverend Harvard. His generous donation helped construct some of the buildings for the new school. The library was founded in 1638 with his donated books and is now the oldest library in all of America.
The first 300 years of Harvard's existence, maybe a little bit less than 300 years, practically every president of Harvard was a pious, convinced believer in Jesus Christ. Many of Harvard's presidents were ministers as well. Until the 1960s, Harvard required that all their students attend the chapel every day.
What about the original purpose for education at Harvard? Well, according to the words behind me, etched in stone, here on campus, it was to be a seminary for the training of ministers. Written in Old English, you find these words: "After God had carried us safe to New England, and we had built our houses, provided necessaries for our livelihood, reared convenient places for God's worship, and settled the civil government, one of the next things we longed for and looked after was to advance learning and perpetuate it to posterity, dreading to leave an illiterate ministry to the churches when our present ministers shall lie in the dust." We can also learn a lot about Harvard by looking at some of its earliest rules, such as the laws and statutes for students of Harvard College. That begins by stating, "Let every student be plainly instructed and earnestly pressed to consider well the main end of his life and studies is to know God and Jesus Christ, which is eternal life." The students were expected to spend personal time in the Scriptures at least twice a day, memorize the Scriptures, and be able to recite these on command if called upon by their teachers. They were also to know Latin, the language of most theological writings of the time, and they were also expected to know Hebrew and Greek in order to be able to translate the Scriptures from their original languages. Now imagine, if these rules were reinstituted at Harvard today, there would almost assuredly be a riot on that campus right there.
In the beginning, the founders of this university, Harvard University and other universities, valued biblical truth as a kind of bedrock upon which ideas were going to be built. It was the kind of foundation upon which philosophies were developed and structures were grown.
Harvard and Yale and Dartmouth were all started to train pastors. And theology was the queen of the sciences. It was the ultimate discipline because it explained the fifth essence, the meaning of life. And what happened in the beginning of the 20th century, a lot of part of the 19th century, modernism crept in and challenged the authenticity and authority of the Bible. And as soon as the Bible was taken out as a discipline, as soon as theology was no longer considered the queen of sciences, secularism took hold. And the bastion of secular thought in the world today is in our most prestigious universities, all started as Christian institutions. The cautionary tale is we have to take back our institutions and protect them.
Harvard has had a tremendous impact on our nation. Several United States presidents have come from Harvard. You think back to John Adams, his son John Quincy Adams, Rutherford B. Hayes, John F. Kennedy, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, and even George W. Bush came to graduate school here.
People who live apart from the East Coast in America have little idea how much of the leadership of America in every area of our life is turned out by Ivy League colleges year after year. 17% of all American college and university students are going to school in Boston alone. 17%.
Even in the first century, Cotton Mather could point to the enormous influence of Harvard graduates in all areas of society. He said this, quote, "Besides the supply of ministers for our churches from this happy seminary, We have hence had a supply of magistrates, as well as physicians and other gentlemen to serve the commonwealth with their capacities. The Puritans believed that whatever field God called them to in a Christian pursuit, that He would call them to pursue it enthusiastically for the glory of God. Now that's the kind of Christian education that was originally offered here. So the truth about the origins of Harvard, our first college, is yet another lost episode in America's history.